Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Excited to be here with you. My name is Greg Tompsett. Going to be riding solo tonight because it's the holidays and we've got different people in different places, but still wanted to come to you today with a postgame podcast, looking to wrap up things after a frankly disappointing game from the Bills and the Patriots. I'm coming to you live from a hotel room here in my hometown of Jamestown, New York. Glad to be back here for the holidays, and for everyone who enjoyed a happy Hanukkah and happy Kwanzaa, I hope you enjoyed that. Me and my family are about to enjoy Christmas, so for my family, I wish you a Merry Christmas, but I hope everyone enjoyed a happy holiday with their friends and family. Today's game didn't help that very much. Obviously, I don't think there was a lot of expectation that the Bills were going to win and going to come in here and definitely upset the Patriots, but there was certainly some optimism. There was certainly some hope, and I think people were getting into a point where they were convincing themselves that there was an opportunity here to be able to do that. And, it certainly was put out pretty quickly. I think there was a fair amount of opportunity to be able to make this competitive, and we'll get into some different things here, but just not many of our teammates supported them and stepped up and did the things that were needed to make this the kind of game that we could stay competitive in, and kind of let things get away from us. So before I jump into some of the details, please go out and take a look at what we have going on at cover1.net. A lot of fantastic coverage going on all over the place. We've got an entire contingent of people going down for the Senior Bowl, getting ready for draft season, which is about all we have left to look forward to now. We've got a ton of guys still doing good breakdowns, good detailed content that you can take advantage of and enjoy. For anyone who hasn't seen lately, Nate Geary and obviously the OG Eric are going through and doing some really awesome film breakdowns, being able to put together a lot of awesome views of Josh Allen's development and where he's looking at how you can find a little bit more than what's in the box score. And of course, we saw more of that again today. So take a look at all the things we have going on there. One of my favorite pieces is the Cover One Premium channel Slack. It's one of the best things that we have going here. And obviously days like today are tough. So a lot of the guys in there had a tough time today, and that's okay. It's hard to keep people focused on silver linings and things to take away from a game that just wasn't very competitive and wasn't very fun to watch. So I don't blame people for getting down on things, but we still are able to look for positive elements. We're still able to discuss, whose fault was that drop pass or whose fault was that miscommunication. So sometimes that's all you have to hold on to and to be able to look for opportunities, to find something to discuss and what we can take a look at and do. But today was a rough one. So again, we'll kind of jump into some of the details, but we're going early today. And what we found is, a game that got out of hand early. The Patriots jumped out 14-0. We did get them on a 3-and-out right off the bat. Then they came back and had several running plays right off the bat, and that became a theme. If you go into a game and you're telling me you're going to hold Tom Brady to 13 of 24 for 126 and 2 interceptions, and that we are going to have it early on the turnover differential win, and they're going to have more penalties for more yards, I'm going to think, this is one of those games that we can be in the middle of, and we're able to, remain competitive. And it simply wasn't the case. We had several instances where I think we could have remained competitive. Early on, you have Robert Foster losing a ball in the sun that he had Stephon Gilmore beat for an 82-yard touchdown. Obviously that makes Josh Allen's box score look a lot better. You had, a touchdown pass go directly through Logan Thomas's hands. You had several other drops from, multiple different receivers. I think we saw probably our first bad drop from Isaiah McKenzie. He had actually been pretty sure-handed, but just about every receiver until garbage time had less than a 50% catch rate on their passes. So just a lot of rough things going on there. We got nothing going from a run standpoint. LaShawn McCoy, 6 carries for 9 yards. I know that there's a lot of guys in the chat here, questioning Francisco, asking if Shady's washed up, and Dunny was talking about that we at least saw him a little bit in the open field. I did like the 3 swing passes to McCoy. It was at least relatively promising. There was a couple of things that were encouraging here, but, we were probably a handful of caught balls, or at least a good catch, maybe not a drop. They weren't horrendous drops. There was a couple, but a couple of them would have been good catches. But, some of those back shoulder throws that we could have fought back for, some of those where they kind of got tangled up trying to come back to the ball, a few of them where we just couldn't kind of keep our footing, it put us in a really difficult position. So it's been frustrating here. I don't know that we have more than one or two offensive players that are long-term fits here. I do think Robert Foster has somewhat of a future. I don't think he needs to be part of our primary game plan as anything more than a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, nice deep threat. I think that you need two receivers better than him to be a competitive offense. I at one point thought Zay Jones was at receiver. I'm not sure. His final line looks fine because 5 of 67 for a touchdown looks good. An awful lot of that was in that last garbage drive. So overall, not a ton from Zay, but the box score says he looked okay. And the same idea for Josh, 20 of 41 for 217, a touchdown and 2 picks. I don't think he was terrible today. I thought the interceptions probably were his fault relatively. He had a couple of really bad throws, and he had several that were, drops by the receiver. Then there was a couple that were miscommunication. I had one really bad throw early on, the one that he sailed way over the receiver's head off to the right. Some people said maybe that was depth perception with the sun and the shadow there, but it was a bad pass either way. The last interception, I think he's just pressing and trying to throw it down there, but it wasn't great. That wasn't a good ball. So there's no, changing that. But, we don't have an NFL caliber tight end. I think Jason Kroom is fine as a backup number 2, number 3 tight end. He's okay on the roster. He's good, cheap depth, but he is not a game-changing talent by any means. Again, I think we have a number 3 and a number 4 receiver, maybe a number 2 and a number 3, but most likely a 3 and a 4. I think Isaiah McKenzie has some potential as a number 5 gadget return guy, but I think we need a tight end or 2, a starting wide receiver or 2, and then I think we have one NFL caliber lineman, and I think Deion Dawkins has struggled having anyone there next to them, but our offensive line is by far the number one concern. I don't know how much of it is LaShawn McCoy's fault because nobody else has any running room either. Chris Ivory's had a bunch of meh games. We haven't really had much outside of there. Murphy didn't do anything special. Allen, again, 5 carries for 30 yards, looked okay today. But the offensive line is the number one priority by far. So whatever we can do to be able to get starting caliber linemen there, I'd love to see us go out and sign one, big budget guy, maybe 2. But realistically, we do probably 1 big money guy and then 2 or 3 value guys. Then I think we also sink a premium draft pick, including hopefully our number 1 draft pick into an offensive lineman, and then probably a 3rd or 4th or 5th round pick as well. And then we probably do something similar next year. Being able to look at securing that offensive line and being able to pull things together for, whatever we can do to make this there. I don't think it's going to be a 1-year fix, but over the next 2 years, I think we can remake 4/5 of the offensive line plus depth and have a good young offensive line put together. Indianapolis did it in 2 off seasons. We've had several teams. Dallas built theirs in 2 seasons. I think you can do that if you invest premium picks and good money and good players. And we have the opportunity to do that this offseason. I don't know for sure that we're going to, but I feel like on offense we have Foster and Zay will be on the roster next year. I think Isaiah McKenzie has an opportunity to be on the roster next year. I think Kroom has an opportunity to be on the roster next year. I think Chris Ivory basically being a healthy scratch tells you what you need to today that he's not going to be. I think Charles Clay basically being a healthy scratch tells you what you need to. Vlad Dukas, all 3 of those guys are under contract next year. Chris Ivory, Charles Clay, and Vlad Dukas are under contract next year. I think all 3 of them are cut as veterans that are going to be lost, and we don't lose a ton from a dead cap standpoint, but there's a little bit. I think between the 3 of them, it's about $6 million total that we'll lose in dead cap, but we still free up much more than that. I think we free up $11 million in cap space to be able to go do that. So on offense, I think that we see almost a full change. I think we see 2 or 3 new starting offensive linemen, maybe as many as 3 or 4. I think we see another complementary back or 2 along with Shady. I do think McCoy is back on the roster next year, but I think it's less of a sure thing than it was 6 weeks ago. I think we see 2 new tight ends along with Kroom, and this can be an entire new offense, and I think we see more investment the year after that. But basically, we've got Josh Allen, Robert Foster, Zay Jones, and maybe Deion Dawkins, and that's about it. So on the offensive side, that's what we saw today. The garbage stats at the end made the box score look a little bit better, but we got held in check by the best defensive game plan mastermind in NFL history. He was daring us to beat them in one-on-one matchups, going cover 0 with 6 guys directly in the box and 5 guys one-on-one in an empty set. And we simply did not have a receiver that could beat his guy one-on-one, and they knew it. And they dared us to, and we never cashed in on it or beat them. I hope that we can change that next year, that we feel comfortable we have guys who can win those one-on-one matchups, and that we can feel confident that's going to work. So I think our offense is what it is. It's the number one priority this offseason, and we're going to focus a lot on using the assets and the plethora of free agency cap space and premium draft picks, and I hope a vast majority of that goes to the offensive side of the ball. Switching over to the defense, I'm honestly less disappointed and frustrated than most people with the defensive performance today, because I've known this was a potential risk and problem all season long. We run a penetrating defensive line plan with 8 guys who can rotate in and do a great job and be able to wreak havoc in the backfield. And if you run tightly planned inside traps and catch us penetrating, it opens up big gaps on the inside. When you add that to having guys like Matt Milano and a really sure tackling nickel cornerback and Taron Johnson being out, and you have inexperienced guys like still a very young rookie in Tremaine Edmonds and backups like Corey Thompson and Julian Stanford, you are going to get exposed in those situations. I still think we have a phenomenal NFL passing defense, and the number one passing defense in the NFL, and it's legitimately the number one passing defense in the NFL. And I think that's all that matters nowadays. It's a passing league, and we have a great passing defense with guys who can pass rush and guys who can cover. And that if a team is disciplined enough to not fall for it and to consistently run the ball and to try to get us there, and they have a great offensive line and they're really disciplined and well coached, they can do that. There's not all that many teams that can do that. There's not all that many teams that are interested in doing that. And you saw the Patriots fall into it today. Anytime they got a penalty and got knocked back, or they didn't get success on first down, we forced them into a punt. They had the one goofy play where Edelman ended up laying on top of the guy and ran for a touchdown. Other than that, their passing offense was nothing today. It was garbage. They had a ton of swing passes out of the backfield and little dump-offs to Edelman and couldn't get anything going. However, they have Dante Scarnecchia, who's potentially the best O-line coach ever, or at least the best O-line coach of the last 25, 30 years since the Hogs and some of those guys back then. They have a fantastic game plan and a great football mind in Belichick, and he's going to direct McDaniels to do what it takes. They're a team that's going to just crush people and do what's working over and over and over again. They got a little creative with some of those jet sweeps, and they kept pounding it to us. I think that's a known risk of this when Tremaine Edmonds is more experienced and doesn't bite on some of those run fakes, when we have Matt Milano healthy, when we have Taron Johnson healthy. I think that we can hold up and not get gashed quite as much as what this was. But I think this is the kind of modern NFL defense that we've chosen to build. I think that it's simply what we're trying to do and how we're trying to build that, because in today's NFL, if you can shut down the pass, you're going to have a positive defensive contribution more than not. So I'd like to think that we have a good shot to be able to make this work, and that I don't want to see wholesale changes on the defense. I think that we have a fantastic core on the defensive side. Obviously, you have our 2 veterans in Kyle Williams and Lorenzo Alexander. Zoe wasn't put into a fair shot today. He's not meant to be a sideline to sideline 95% snaps coverage linebacker anymore. He is an awesome person. He's, rightfully up for the NFL Man of the Year. He is a fantastic mentor and a leader and someone I want in our locker room, and a very good contributing situational pass rusher and third linebacker when you need it. He's just not in a position to be a sideline guy anymore, and it's unfair that we put him in that spot to have to do that. So I do think he got isolated a couple times today, but he also made some awesome plays. He had an interception. He got a couple tackles for a loss. He shows that he still can contribute and was all over the field doing a lot of great things. So it's something that we want him back on this team. I want Lorenzo Alexander on my football team anytime I can get it. So if he comes back, I'm happy. Kyle Williams is the heart and soul of this team. For anyone who didn't see the amazing throwback to Love Actually, the Christmas movie, he and Harrison Phillips did the holding up the sign thing on video. It's fantastic. I recommend it for everybody. Please go out there and check it out. It's hysterical. I hope that Kyle Williams wants to come back for one more season. I think Lorenzo Alexander might have 1 to 2 seasons left. If Kyle comes back, next year's for sure his last run. Maybe they work out a deal with him where he's comfortable playing closer to the 40% snaps rather than 60% snaps, and he's playing all the high leverage situations, all of our third down plays and things like that. But that defensive line is going to be a big part of our future. And although they didn't look great today, giving up a lot of rushing yardage, they still have a lot of good penetrating players. The things that make people like Jordan Phillips and Jerry Hughes and Harrison Phillips and Trent Murphy, guys that penetrate and flash and get into the backfield, those can get taken advantage of in games like this where they're running a ton of inside trap and they're running a ton of those plays where once you penetrate and they get by you, you give up a huge gap, and they ran through it. So I don't see that as an enormous concern. But again, it wasn't a great day, and it's hard to say anything else about it, that it was a good day when you give up whatever it was. I think they ended up with 273 rushing yards. That's pretty terrible. 117 passing. So in total, we gave up 380 yards, which is a lot, but not horrible. But still was demoralizing as it was happening, and I get why people were frustrated. Turning it over to special teams. I wasn't ignoring you guys in the chat. I saw a handful of comments for it. Again, our special teams were horrible today. I think there was one decent return that I think was pretty much Bolden taking it upon himself for 128-yarder. We got nothing on punt returns. None of the rest of the kick returns were any good. They had decent returns over and over again. We had almost every punt was blocked. I get it. Matt Darr is our 4th punter of the year. That's not on Crossman, but the lack of blocking for the punts is. I think it's unfair what they're doing to Steven Hauschka. He obviously is not fully healthy there, left a 43-yarder short. He's not all the way there. For another adult to lose their job, that's not a great thing to root for. I hope that Danny Crossman moves on this year. I hope that they're able to find another up-and-coming special teams coordinator. Maybe we have somebody on the team that can move up. I don't think so. I don't think there's anyone really seen as a future coordinator from a special team standpoint, but I hope that we see them give somebody else a shot. We need a new voice. Crossman was brought in with, as far back as freaking Doug. So, we got rid of that. We got rid of Rex. We brought in McDermott. Somehow Crossman survived all 3 of those coaching staffs and has obviously, had more than his opportunity to be able to establish something here and hasn't been able to do so. So, it is what it is. I think that there's a lot of opportunity, but I've said it over and over again on this pod that depth really helps special teams. Having NFL caliber depth and not having 70 million in dead cap, that helps a lot, because that helps your 45th to 50th guy. That helps your 35th guy. All the guys that aren't starting rotational players, you have better depth there. That maybe that helps that when Matt Milano and Taron Johnson don't go down, we're not, crossing our fingers that Raphael Bush can play the nickel from a third safety standpoint. I'd like it if Raphael Bush was just a backup and on special teams. Corey Thompson, I'd love if Corey Thompson was just a special teams guy and not on the field having to make 9 tackles today. So those kind of things are what we're looking for to be able to build that up. It can help on penalties too, although we didn't have a lot of penalties today. So that was a nice bonus. We had seen that a lot this season. But I think both of those things are hit. I think guys that are struggling and worried about just making a roster have a lot of things going through their mind. You're not making sound decisions all the time, and you're not consistently focused on your technique and things that are there. I think that can lead to penalties. And then having substandard talent where you're struggling to do that, I think can lead to penalties. So I think it helps special teams. I think it cuts down on penalties. I think there's a lot of positive things that are going to come from being able to restock the depth of the roster this offseason with the 10 draft picks that we have, the almost near 100 million. I think it'll be over 100 million once we see the veteran cuts that we have early on. I think that you're going to have a lot of these and being able to go forward and be able to help what we're putting together here. Again, for today's game, there's not a ton to take away. It wasn't a great experience, and it wasn't a fantastic opportunity to be able to go in and look for anything else that's coming from a game, and being able to, try to put together something focused on what we have going forward. So being able to find a lot of the positive things that we have on the roster, I think we do have a young core that can lead us to, some exciting things in the future. I think that we have a stellar coaching staff in many areas that have shown the ability to develop what is not universally seen as great talent. I think we have a good front office in being able to identify potentially strong talent that's out there to be able to look for players like a Robert Foster, like an Isaiah McKenzie, like a Levi Wallace. I think those are exciting things to be able to look for and to be able to build on in the future. So being able to go through there and kind of look for things that we can look to in the future, I think that there's still a lot of positives here. It's tough on a day where you get a demoralized loss and being able to, kind of pull in whatever you can to look for silver linings in a rough game. Those are never fun things to do. It's never a good time to be able to go in and try to pull from those things. We did see a couple upsets in some of the other games that were out there that I think can at least benefit some draft position. I think that the Bills might move up a pick or two here into the 8th or the 9th spot. But again, we're going to be looking for some talent there. I think that I wouldn't be shocked to see Bean trade down. I think that you're able to go through and hopefully find some things that the team can look for on offensive talent, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see a defensive guy go in the first round. But overall, I think that there's a lot of positive things going on here. There's a great core for the team. There's a lot of positive items to be able to build on going forward, but sometimes that's tough to see in a game like today, where I think a lot of people had their hopes up that we were going to be competitive against a Patriots team that looked vulnerable. But as we've learned for 20 years now, they're never as vulnerable as we think, and they're always going to be a well-coached, disciplined team that's going to come in and make good plays and be able to focus on what they need to get a win in a game they really needed. When you compound that with what we just saw in the Eagles kicking a last-minute field goal to beat the Texans, I think they've jumped right back into a tie, if not the position for the first-round bye and a first-round their top 2 seed in the AFC. So frustrating again. We'll see a positive journey for the Patriots into the playoffs and just hope somebody else can bump them off. As we wrap up for the day, just want to be able to make sure to remind you to go out there, take a look at what we have going on at cover1.net. A lot of great things. I know today's show was a shorter show, so we got a lot of other guys that are out here having to go solo. Aaron is enjoying time with his family. You'll see more video breakdowns coming up from Eric and Nate. A lot of good things coming out here. Take a look at the 4 Up, 4 Down that we'll have coming out. You'll have the draft coverage from Christian and from Russell and our newest guy, Jordan. A lot of just fantastic coverage going on and a lot of quality content. So take a look at everything that we have going there. It's been fun being able to talk to you guys, and I'm going to go back and enjoy some time with my family. And obviously not as good on a game like today where things were rough and out of hand quickly. But again, I still think there's a lot of positive things to look for from this Bills team, and we'll look forward to much more of that in the future. Hope everybody has a great night. Happy holidays and enjoy time with your families. See you soon.